Great. Thanks for having me. I'm not much of a slide or be the person standing at the front of a room, like, talking to everybody while I'm standing up. So I'm just going to sit down. On the program, I think it introduces me as being from the SLOW project, which was a social change project that I started several years ago, which sort of morphed into my PhD. But in the process of looking at the SLOW movement, at the same time I was getting more and more involved in running sort of nature-based spirituality programs. So just giving you that context because I'm going to refer to that a little bit during this talk. So basically I run sort of like modern day Vision Quest, where I take people out into nature and kind of leave them there for a little while. But essentially, and I've spent, lots of time alone in nature by myself. So a lot of the, I guess, reflections in this talk is really about like what makes us essentially human, and honouring the fact that we're part of nature and realising that we can learn from the patterns in nature, which so much of that sort of wisdom of just a natural system sort of comes through the process of just being on a quest out in nature without, having to sort of cognitively do a lot of processing around it. So that's a bit of my background for this talk. Also, you should know, so many of these ideas come from Charles Eisenstein's Sacred Economics. So in the talk today, I'm going to be comparing, basically what the current economic system based on interest-bearing debt does to us as humans and our systems, and compare it with the gift economy, which Eisenstein talks about a lot, but in Sacred Economics he goes into a lot broader range of ideas as well, if you want to check it out more. So our current system, as I said, based on interest-bearing debt. So it's, in my mind, the fact that we've got GDP as this goal at the moment is not actually the root cause. The main problem is that every time that money is created, debt is created. And so what that means is that there is always more debt than money. And what does that do? It creates artificial scarcity and artificial competition. And we sort of are taught that, competition's good though, right? It makes us be better, and that's how the economy is so magical and wonderful for us. But even that is outdated. Like, even biologists realise that in natural systems, competition is less of a factor than the avoidance of competition. So cooperation among species is really what drives the evolution and what an ecosystem imbalance looks like. So even all this idea of competition is good is already, out the window anyway. And of course, what does that mean? It means we essentially always have to try to not be the losers, because there's some magical chocolate wheel and someone's always going to end up without the seat to sit on. So we've always got to strive hard to make sure that it's not us, whether that's on an individual level or whether that's on the level of countries. So I've got a lot of empathy of people who are, trying to run things and we've got to keep growing, because, it's a pretty bad thing at the moment if you don't have growth, because you're going to end up being the loser. Of course, all this is just an agreement amongst humans, and we can change that agreement, but it's pretty entrenched power structures. So, it's a challenge. It'll be a challenge. And so, for example, we end up having to do things like convert social and environmental capital into financial capital just to keep the system going. And the less and less of actual stuff we have to convert, the more and more destructive it ends up looking like. So, we end up turning a forest into wood chips because, but we need to have something that we can pump into the economic system. Or socially, we do things like take stuff that we used to just do for each other, like minding each other's children. Now we have to pay for childcare. Or wise advice from an elder. Now we've got to pay a consultant or a coach. And, the system continues, and the more and more we're stretched for resources and scarcity, and it's a very downward cycle. So compare that with a gift economy. So what's a gift? Well, a gift is something that you give away freely, and that's sometimes, I think, a misperception in gift economy. It's not just barter. So you're not giving someone something in the expectation that that person in particular is going to be who gives you something in return. However, it's all mediated in a web of relationships. So it's not just saying, there's not the level of insecurity within that system that it might sound like. because the distribution of these resources is mediated through relationship. So nature uses a gift economy to maintain balance within an ecosystem. And we could do pretty well for remembering that we are actually nature. So if we want to understand how we can maintain a balance within our systems, we could probably just learn for what works for ecosystems and also human systems that have been around for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even longer years. And you can see from nature there's, a whole range of really creative symbiotic relationships start to occur. Even with humans, like there was a lovely example of, in Africa, there's a type of honey eater that alerts people to where the what are they called? Beehives are, things with honey, so that the people then go and find the hive, but then a little bit gets left over for the birds as well. So everybody's kind of winning. And there's also the idea that even things like bees producing more honey than they need is also part of the gifts to the rest of life as well, or an apple tree with more apples than I'll ever need to produce seeds. It's giving that freely. It doesn't say, oh, well, no, you did something bad to that person over there, so I'm not going to let you have an apple. Like, there's not that level of kind of judging in order to filter who gets what. And of course, we can also learn a lot from Indigenous people who didn't forget that they were part of nature as well. And they also functioned on gift economies. There's sort of I don't know if it's a popular idea, but part of the sort of, but Indigenous people were really civilised, they had barter, but even that has been overstated from what I've read, because we underestimated and didn't have an appreciation for just how sophisticated a gift economy could be. So, something might talk about it as a circle of giving, and sometimes it was literally a circle of giving. So there's like some islands in the Pacific where the gift just made its way around the whole ring of islands. So it was literally a circle. And it's not like it wasn't, there wasn't a system to it. So things were organised. So there was a continual flow. And, no, I'll talk about that point later. Don't want to spoil it because I've got a really good point coming up. And even, South America, lots of people really into the sort of Andean culture these days. What's one of the core concepts? Aini, or sacred reciprocity. So within Indigenous societies, you see so much of their stories are around the importance of giving and receiving and honouring both the giver and the gift. I also heard that in quite a few of our Indigenous languages here in Australia, there's no words for please and thank you, which is not because there wasn't that gratitude and honouring of the gift, but because it was just taken, it was just a thing that you just did, you just gave. You didn't have to say anything special because it was just an inherent part of how it all functioned. So there are three things in particular about the gift economy that I wanted to highlight. First of all is gratitude. This is like the life-giving force of a gift economy. So what happens when you receive a gift? You feel grateful. And when you feel grateful, what do you want to do? Share. Exactly. And so this is how this distribution continues, more and more and more. And like even if you're worried about not having enough, what's the most important thing for you to do? Give. So that when you need it, you get it back. But within our current system of artificial scarcity and competition, that process gets polluted and ruined. So that. And so kind of related to that, our definition of self also shifts. And this is getting to, this 2035 idea. One of the key things that, certainly Eisenstein believes is shifting, and I really think is shifting as well, is this core concept of what is the self. So if you are aware of how many gifts you're given, and really all we have to do is just start practicing noticing in order to get that. We didn't wake up in the morning and just go, oh yeah, I really earned the air that I'm breathing today. Like, you didn't earn air, you didn't earn sunshine. So you are given gifts because you are deserving of a gift. And so once you start to become aware of that, you've got to realise, I can't be in this world of separate selves based in competition. So there becomes this disproving of these worldviews that we currently hold, which is saying that I am a separate self living in a world of other separate selves, so therefore I need to look out for myself, and everything's in competition. So we can start to see that in a giving type economy, and even we have seeds of that today. I mean, I don't know how many of you are involved in like bartering pages or buy nothing pages on Facebook. There's a whole lot of good stuff going on, because I think we're in part of this trend to see ourselves come back to a worldview of interbeing, or at least appreciating just how dependent on each other we are. Because when I realise that my thriving depends on your thriving, suddenly we realise just how much of myself and my being is supported and can only exist through relationship. So therefore, how can I be without my relationship on a very real base level? What else do I want to say? Oh yeah, so it becomes like a positive cycle. So you receive a gift and you feel grateful and you want to give some more. Your sense of relationship with everything else is enforced, and your sense of self starts to shift to realising that you're more interconnected. And so therefore you don't need to start going, okay, well, I'm not going to do this because that's worse for me but better for somebody else. You can start to loosen up and just give more freely. And then the giving cycle continues and gratitude comes back into it, and then more giving happens and the sense of self becomes even more porous, and suddenly we have a very regenerative looking system going on. So that, okay, and the last one, I couldn't really work out how to separate. I sort of titled it Purpose, Power and Community. And this is where my work with the quests sort of come into it, because really, once we become aware of how many gifts are all around us, we can start to experience the full manifestation of the gift, which is to live your life as an expression of gratitude. And that's where coming back to your sense of purpose in life links back in. And I really believe this is one of the reasons that I really love running the quests and holding them, and feel so humble and grateful to be able to witness people going through this process, and the stories that they share is that if we were all really living in alignment with what our purpose was in this lifetime, I don't think there's really kind of anything else we need to worry about. You know, like the rest will just take care of itself. Let's just live in alignment and on purpose. But of course, you know, with the system that we currently have, there's always a clash. You know, how many times do we hear, oh, this is what I'd really love to be doing, but I can't because of money. And that's all artificial. It's like we know what we feel is true, and yet we have to try to exist within a very, artificial system, which is not ideal. It's also incredibly disempowering. I mean, of course, money by design is around scarcity, and essentially we're always giving away our power because, you know, there's always more debt, so at some point in time we are kind of enslaving ourselves just by being a part of the system. Damn. Also, it's very, like, homogenizing, so, you know, one reason why we can find our purpose and feel like we have a place in community is because there wasn't anybody else to do your role, like, a while ago in a gift economy. But now, well, if you can't do that job for me, I can just pay someone else to do it. So we suddenly, our relationships within community is broken down because community is based on when we need each other. And if we can fully be expressing our unique gifts, well, no one can replace you. And we all realise that we all need each other. I mean, and this does get down to the fact we live in just such large, complex societies as well. So there's a lot of other challenges within it. But I think this relocalisation that we see with the slow movement and, you know, cooperatives and that kind of thing really feeds back into getting back to being able to grow in communities and giving amongst ourselves. And I mean, it sounds like exactly what's happening with you guys is talk about sweat equity and people just putting in what they can as individuals. Yeah. And getting, you know, when you feel like you're fully in your power, what are you doing? It's when you're giving what you feel like is your unique gifts. That's when you'll feel the most empowered and full of life. And I'm also a shamanic practitioner, so I think a lot about like weird stuff that goes on in multi-dimensional levels. But I would also argue that's when like the full life force is flowing through you, because when you're fully being yourself, you can fully embody your soul, and that energy can flow out into the world. I mean, that could be metaphorical, but who knows? The world's a hologram. Yeah, exactly. It happens on many levels. Everything could be right. Yeah, I've said those words. Oh yeah, this is another really cool point. So an interesting definition of Indigeneity is that one who feels and understands their connection with their place, with their ecology, their system, enough that they understand how they can be of service, i.e. how to give their gifts. That was from Wallen Bishop, another amazing thinker, if you want to look that up. And I think like our sense of calling for our purpose, it comes from something greater than ourselves, and it's kind of like it's an invitation from the universe to be fully yourself. Like it's an invitation for us to fully be human, be ourselves as human beings. And I think that happens on an individual level, and I think that also happens on a collective level. So yeah, I hope you're getting the sense that the gift economy is inherently resacralizing, both for ourselves as individuals and our sense of self as a connected self, but also resacralizing our relationship with all of life. And it's bringing us, I really hope that what we're doing is coming through a sort of initiatory kind of period. Like, in childhood it is more about taking, like, this balance of giving and receiving is different at different points in life. And childhood, yeah, you mostly take, and you wouldn't like really say that it should be any different. Then in adolescence you go through an initiation. Well, let's hope you do. Personally, I think a lot of our issues in the modern world is we don't do that anymore, especially men. Well, we have it in other ways. And it's challenging, but a lot of like traditional initiation processes for adolescents were about finding your purpose, like really what's my place within my community. And I think we're going through that kind of collectively at the moment. At least, I really hope so. And that we step out of it. I mean, sometimes you don't survive initiations. That's, the other part of it. Not the ones I run. Everyone comes back. I've only lost one person. We found her eventually. And then you come through your initiation and you're an adult. And everyone knows that. And what do you do in adult? That's your time to also give back. So I really hope we're stepping into our adulthood collectively, coming to realise the gift of the human, which is to be a caretaker of everything. And what's the real definition of an economy? The etymology of economy is stewardship of the common village. So if we want to come back to well, really, how do we participate in an economy? It's coming to realise that, we are, as humans, carers of everything. Thanks.
Thank you.